Well, briefly, I'm going to point out to you some of the topics I'm mentioning. I'm working first with some theoretical concepts on culture and their implications on education. Then I'm bringing some examples of local intercultural educational programs we developed here at my university and their methodological approaches. Then I move on to intercultural collaboration projects. Going towards the end are some thoughts on this summer school and the future collaborations. Next, then we can have our interaction. It is quite obvious to us all that international communication requires the knowledge of languages. But there is no language without culture. So what's absolutely important is that we know how to deal with different cultures. Let me please point out what I mean by culture. Culture is meant to be a set of behaviors, habits, historical social practices, values, meanings, and beliefs. So, if we want to succeed in international communication, we have to be open to differences and to take risks by acting in intercultural way. Let me explain what I mean by interculturality. This implies dynamic interaction between individuals and groups. And whenever we get in contact with another culture, we have our own identity transformed. What I'm doing here is that I want to stress the close relationship between interculture, identity change, and this is ultimately what we have in education. That's what education is all about. As educators, our business is to change people's identities and give them access to different contexts and different cultures. So it's relevant to have a close look at what education means. According to the United Nations on Sustainable Development Goals, especially on quality education, education enables upward socioeconomic mobility and is a key to escaping poverty. Therefore, education is seen as a disruptive mechanism aiming at transforming the system, the status quo. Then we come, the role of university in changing society through educational projects. It is our business as professors to transform people's culture. So our ultimate purpose as teachers and professors is closely linked to transforming identity and transforming cultures. Culture transformations only take place if educators then are aware of learners' culture. Once, quoting a famous Brazilian scholar, one cannot transform what one does not understand. With this in mind, learners and educators have to engage in meaningful interaction so as to display their historically built culture. And here I quote a very famous Russian scholar who has been influential in our education, and also Paulo Freire, who is an equivalent of Vygotsky in my country. Going on to point out the requirements for culture transformation, it's important that there is acceptance of others, there's acceptance by others, and their distinct views. Therefore, intense negotiation of meanings is crucial to bring about effective transformations in lifestyles habits, and social practices. Let me now provide you with some examples on the projects here at the Federal University of Lavras in Brazil. They are local, but they do deal with different cultures in educational terms. So before we actually go into the slides, let me give you an idea of the university we have here. On your top right, you have the president's office. Then in the bottom right, you have a bird's eye view of our campus. And on the left, you have some buildings. Extending the picture, I think it's important for you to know that we have about 12,000 students, 600 professors, acting in around 35 undergrad courses and over 40 graduation courses. But the target here are some examples on the projects we carry out. We have many extension projects. These projects are aiming at the surrounding communities, individuals, public and private institutions. And what we do is that we offer courses, events, programs, projects, services, internship, publications, and other technical and artistic projects. UFLA offers nearly 400 courses to local community. I'm going to narrow down to one specific project I take part in. They are, this one I'm meaning to show you about, is a government and institutional funded program with basic education pre-service teachers, with public high school students, and with local associations. Let's get to it. Specifically, I turn to one teacher education program. This is funded by both the government, the Brazilian government, and the local institution, and takes place here in our city, in our community, for a period of 2 years. In this program, we have the public school involved, the public school teacher, the undergrad students will be the future teachers, and the university educator. In order to bring everybody together towards a common effort, scholarships are given for undergrads, teachers, and educators. Moving now to the methodological approach. Before we actually start with the intervention at the schools, we make a point in gathering some data. And this data involves socioeconomic characteristics of the community. For instance, it's important for us to know about the family income, the jobs the children's parents perform, their living standards, their religion traditions, their values, festivities, recreation, and eating habits, for example. Just to give you a picture of my country, towards the left, you have a typical poor family country house. And it's important to observe that it's quite often to find these families among our grammar school and middle school. You see the mother being the main provider, many children, and sometimes the father is not present. Going to the second picture, what you have there is a gathering of a religion called Umbanda. This religion was inherited by African slaves, and since we are a Catholic country, considered to be a Catholic country, there's a lot of prejudice against some religions, like this one. The third picture portrays children in a traditional costume for the most traditional festivity in Brazil. And this festivity is very important to our community and throughout the country. And an example, the last example, refers to our staple diet in our state. You have on the plate there rice and beans, okra, chicken, and a cornmeal puree. So all this is important for us to know before we actually interact with the school, the public schools. Another point in our methodological approach that it is that prior to the intervention, we go to the school for observation, for participation in school activities and interaction with teachers and students twice a week for at least 1 month. What you have there, the pictures you have are from the project I'm involved in. And on the top picture, you have the children in the public school, and the girls whose heads are not shown are our undergrad students, future teachers. Then we have towards the left, at the bottom left, a gathering to discuss some plans we have for the schools to get to know the environment, and we have a recreational center in one of our public schools. So after going through this data and studying the environment we are going to be working with, then we move to the action plans, which are elaborated in collaboration with the public school, as I mentioned before, with a teacher, taking careful attention to their needs, their wants, and their values. Just to give you an example, the picture top left is when the school had the aim of introducing the students, the middle students, the middle school system students to Japanese culture, because the main goal for the semester was to broaden students' knowledge about the world. Then the second top, we had a meeting with the educators, the undergrad students, the teacher from the public school, and some foreigners to know what another country is like. To the right, you have a party we had at school. That was a Halloween party. And on the bottom, you have some pictures taken in the school with the same people. The middle picture was a field trip to an open-air art museum. For most children, it was the first time they left their hometown, because this art museum is about 200 kilometers from Lavras. And in the last picture, you had an explanation by our undergrads to the students according to their needs. There was more a theoretical class. Other action plans we have are the ones displayed on these pictures, which always aim their needs and empowering autonomy for the students. Well, all this brings us to consider that in intercultural collaboration projects, it is absolutely crucial that we respect each other's cultures and values, which involves, of course, being flexible, recognizing complexities, and avoiding stereotyping. We must also learn about each other's historically built culture, their needs, their wants, their achievements, and their limitations. We always make a point not to bring ready-made solutions, but to learn from locals and exchange knowledges and experiences in order to negotiate possibilities for the problems that come about. Of course, this requires being willing to collaborate towards common goals. In lay terms, what we have here as a paramount thing to pursue is that we always want to collaborate with people we can learn from. There's never, from the part of the university, a purpose of going there to teach them something. We learn also in the projects, and in the process. And this also means, and this is a point I want to make here for this presentation, is that we build our futures together in the words we exchange today, just like we are doing right now. This is why this summer school is so rich in establishing ground for our hopes for the future, even when we are in the middle of one of the most serious world crises of our generation, the pandemics. This summer school makes us feel like being closer and effectively work together, join knowledges and experiences. This summer school led us to be more curious about each other and to learn so much from each other. This is why this summer school makes me feel so honored to be here. Or, bringing the words of two famous philosophers, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. You know the song. So, I'd like to close by saying obrigada, thank you in my own language, to my fellow dreamers who are helping to make dreams come true. Thank you very much for being patient enough to listen to me and for this opportunity. Thank you very much. Obrigada. This is what I had to say today, and I'm ready to exchange thoughts on this topic or whichever you find interesting.